Thank you very much. Okay, this is super strong. Okay, so I'm very happy to give this talk. I will tell you about bandit convex optimization. I have been working on this for 2 years now, and I will tell you about the result we had during the first year. This is, by the way, my co-author Ronen Eldan, when we were working on this paper. Okay, so what is bandit convex optimization? It's very simple. It goes like this. So we are given a convex body K in Rn, and we are going to play a sequential game from t equals 1 to capital T. At each time step, the player selects a point xt in the convex body, and simultaneously there is an adversary that selects a loss function Lt, which goes from this convex body to 0, 1. So the losses are bounded between 0 and 1. And the player both suffers and observes the loss Lt at xt. And that's the only thing that we know about this loss function Lt. And we're going to consider the cumulative regret. So we look at the sum of the losses that we have suffered, so that's the sum of Lt of xt, and we compare ourselves to the best we could have done in hindsight. So given the sequence of losses, L1, L2, etc., there is a fixed point that would have been the best, and we compare ourselves to that. That's the cumulative regret. Okay, and the problem is to show that you can get in this setting square root t regret. That was the open problem. So let me just tell you one word about, or maybe 2 words about the 2 sentences about the motivation. So my interest in this problem is really to understand, to map to map the territory of what is doable with bandit feedback. Okay, so bandit feedback is I think quite fundamental. So this is what happens in reinforcement learning, right? You take some action and you just observe a scalar value. Okay, so you don't observe a full vector. You cannot do something like gradient descent. Okay, yet in many problems, actually, you can do something like gradient descent. So one method that we know and love is mirror descent. You know, one instance of it is exponential weights. One instance of it is the basic gradient descent. So mirror descent solves many bandit problems, but it doesn't appear to solve this bandit problem. Okay. So one reason to study this also is that it forces you to go beyond the current tools that we have. Okay, and we'll see that while working on this, actually, we discovered quite a few new tools, and so it really worked. So the theorem that I will tell you about today is that there exists a randomized strategy for this game such that for any adversary, the regret is bounded by n to the 11 square root t. Okay. So there is a long history on this problem. Many people in the room have worked on it. So it started with a paper by Kleinberg in 2004, which got a t to the 3/4. So let's forget the dependency on the dimension for the moment. So it got t to the 3/4. And for 10 years, until this paper, this was the best we could do. Okay. So there was absolutely no progress on the general question during 10 years. But during those years, we still worked hard as a community, and we found many subcases, important and interesting subcases of bandit convex optimization where we could obtain square root t. The most important one is the linear case. It's important because of its connection to contextual bandits. So in the linear case, it started with 2 very nice papers by Dani A.S. and Kakade, and Abernathy, Hazan, and Rachlin, which showed that you can get square root t. Then we improved it a little bit in terms of the dimension. Now we know exactly what is the optimal dimension dependency. So the results in red are the state of the art, and the blue are what I'm going to talk about today. So I won't tell you about all these papers, but basically we were looking at what if we add smoothness, what if we add strong convexity, what if we add both, what if the sequence of losses is IID. So this is Agarwal, Foster, Su, Kakade, and Rachlin. Okay, there were lots of work, so I will tell you about this. Let me just mention that shortly after, a few months after our paper, Hazan and Lee, they published an algorithm. So as you will see, we don't have an algorithm. So this paper gives an algorithm, but the dependency on the dimension is exponential, 2 to the n to the 4 log to the n. And coming up next week, we have a new paper, so that's still with Ronen and with Yintat Lee, where we can improve a little bit the dependency on the dimension, and we have an algorithm. Okay, so there is an efficient algorithm for this problem. I won't talk about this. Let me just mention a conjecture that I would like to put forward, which is that the optimal regret for this problem is n to the 1.5 square root t. Okay, so we neither know the lower bound nor the upper bound. Okay, so the best lower bound right now is n square root t. OAD also showed that even if you assume both smoothness and strong convexity, you cannot do better. But in fact, I think that by using convex function, you can push the lower bound to n to the 1.5. Okay, but we don't have, as far as I know, any tools to answer this type of question. Okay, so let me tell you about the proof of the upper bound. So we are going to do an information theoretic analysis. The first step is to use a min-max theorem. So the fact that there exists a distribution over algorithm such that for any adversary something happens is equivalent to saying that for any distribution over adversaries, there exists an algorithm such that the same thing happens. Okay, so now we can switch things and we can assume that we have a distribution over adversaries. What does it mean? It's a distribution over sequences of losses. Okay, of course this sequence is not IID, there could be very strong dependencies. Now we are going to use the Russo and Fanroy information ratio analysis from 2014. So this is, I think, a very deep paper with lots of beautiful ideas. So I will tell you just the gist of it. So for point x in k, I'm going to define two quantities, a notion of regret and a notion of information. So the notion of regret is like this. So E sub t denotes the expectation conditionally on everything we have observed. Okay, this is your posterior distribution at time step t. So you have observed L1 of x1, L2 of x2, etc. So let's look at what is our expected regret if we play x. Okay, this is a quantity we can compute. X star, just to be clear, x star is a minimizer at the end of the game. This is a random variable now. You should think of it like that. So we can do this integration. And VTX is going to be a notion of how much information do we get when we play x. Okay, so when we play x, we observe LT of x. But in LT of x, there could be some randomness which is irrelevant to identify x star. So I'm just going to average out all the randomness which has nothing to do with x star. So let's look at the expectation of LT of x conditionally on the value of x star. This is a random variable, and I look at its variance conditionally on everything that I have observed. So if there is no variance, if this variance is 0, then I don't get any information. Okay, it means that I always observe the same thing no matter what is x star. So by playing x, I don't get information. If this is big, then it means that I get lots of information. The key observation of Russo and Fanroy is that there is only so much you can learn about this value x star. So if you sum the information that you have accumulated over capital T time step, this is bounded by the entropy of x star. Okay. So the first time I saw that, I was a bit shocked because, I mean, you would imagine that maybe this will scale with T or something. Okay. But no, it's completely independent of T. And if you think a little bit more about it, it's quite clear what's happening. So you have this random variable x star. Either you learn something about it, so the VTX is positive, and then you decrease the entropy of this random variable, or you don't learn anything, and then, okay, VT is 0. So the way you prove this is simple. You just apply Pinsker's inequality. Now you have a term which is a relative entropy term. This relative entropy term, it's easy to see that it's a mutual information term. A mutual information is a difference of entropies, and this difference of entropies is going to lead to a telescopic sum, and that's how you get this entropy. Okay, good. So now let's build on this observation, and let's see how we can use this to show square root T bound. So let me assume, so just for sake of notation, denote by capital X a random variable whose law is the same as the law of xt conditionally on everything that I have observed. Okay, so capital X is just what am I going to play at round T given all the information that I have. So let's assume that this random variable satisfies the following inequality. My expected regret by playing capital X is bounded by square root of my expected information. Let me just say, okay, this is an assumption and we need to verify it. This is quite a deep inequality, right? What it's saying is that whenever I get regret, I also get information. Okay, so if I regret what I did, I also learn something. Okay, it's a pretty useful thing in life in general. And so let's sum up those things. Okay, so if you sum the regret, RT of xt, then you have that this is bounded by the sum of the square root. Let's apply Cauchy-Schwarz. This is bounded by square root of T times the sum of those things. The sum of those things is bounded by the entropy. Okay, so you get square root of Ct times the entropy. Now, x star is a random variable on a convex body in Rn, so its entropy, because we never care about things below the scale 1 over T. Okay, below scale 1 over T, nothing matters. So the entropy of such a variable is always bounded by n log T. Okay, that's pretty easy to see. So as long as we have this bound, we immediately get that we can get a square root T regret, okay, with n log T. So the only question becomes, what is this C, and what is the Bayesian strategies that we're going to use? Okay, so we want to prove this. The first thing you can try is Thompson sampling. Okay, we have already seen it. So let me denote by nu T the posterior distribution on x star, given all the information that I have, so L1, x1 up to LT minus 1, xt minus 1. One thing that you can do is you can just draw a random variable from this posterior distribution and play that. Okay. So what Dan showed is that in this case, Thompson sampling verifies this inequality, but with C, the value of C is the size of the support of x star. So for traditional multi-arm bandit, if you have n arms, then the support of x star is n, and you get that this C is n. So if you look at the previous slide, you get exactly the square root nt log n, or log t. Okay? So this is very nice. It's like 3 lines proof, right? That you can get square root Tn regret for multi-arm bandit with n arms. But this is assuming without convexity, and in our case, of course, the support is infinite. Or let's say if you do a discretization, the size of the support is like T to the n. Okay, so it's huge. So what we did last year at Colt in dimension 1 is that we were able to show that C is actually polylog of the size of the support if you assume convexity. But this was only in dimension 1, and it looked totally impossible to generalize to dimension 2. So also one thing that I have come to believe after working on this problem is that dimension 1 and dimension 2 are completely different. Okay, they are just completely different beasts for this problem. The problem in dimension 1 is much, much, much easier than in dimension 2. In particular, everything that I'm talking about today, we don't have a simple proof of it in dimension 2. Okay, whereas in dimension 1, we have simpler proof. Okay, so the new strategy that we are going to design is just an epsilon greedy strategy, except that epsilon is going to be chosen in a smart way, and what we do when we do the exploration is also going to be reasonably smart. So it goes like this. So let me denote. So what would be the exploitation step? So our expected loss, LT of x, so this is the expectation conditionally on the path of LT of x. If we were greedy, we would place a point which minimizes this expected loss. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So let me denote by x tilde the minimizer of this point. And let x bar is going to be an exploration point, which I will talk about on the next slide. And delta is going to be my epsilon greedy, is going to be the probability with which we explore. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to be greedy with probability 1 minus delta, and I'm going to explore with probability delta. Okay, it's like the simplest possible strategy. And now I will tell you how we choose delta and how we choose x bar, sorry. Okay. So this exploration probability delta is going to depend on the variance that we have in the posterior. So if there is lots of variance in the posterior, it means that we're really lost. We don't know where is the optimum. And then we want to explore with a larger probability. Okay. And the point x bar, okay, this seems pretty obscure right now. It's selected with the pigeonhole principle and the multi-scale exploration distribution on this thing. In 10 minutes, you will know all about those quantities. Okay, so this is the, so the next 2 slides are a bit messy. So interrupt me if something is not clear. Okay, everything should be clear. So if something is not clear, just tell me, shout or something. Okay, so let's denote by omega t of epsilon the following set of points. So I'm going to look at the set of points alpha in my convex body, which are points that I would like to discover. So let's look at it. So this is the best I can hope to win right now in expectation. Okay, so this is the expectation of the minimizer. Now let's condition on x star is equal to alpha. If x star was alpha, what would be my loss by playing x? Right? When I say if x star is alpha, then it changes the posterior distribution. Now I have a new posterior distribution, something different happened. So I'm going to be interested in the points where if I knew that x star was alpha, I would get an epsilon smaller loss. Okay. So again, I say it again. This is the best I can hope right now, given all the information that I have. But if I knew that x star was alpha, in fact, this point x would give me epsilon regret, and this point x should be alpha. Okay, so if I knew that the optimum was alpha and I played alpha, I would get an epsilon smaller regret. Okay, so using just so everybody knows Markov's inequality, there is an inverse to Markov's inequality, which is true for at least 1 point. Okay, so Markov's inequality is true for all values of epsilon. The reverse Markov's inequality is true for at least 1 epsilon. So by the reverse Markov, it's easy to see that there exists an epsilon such that the mass, so nu t is the posterior distribution, so the mass that the posterior puts on the set omega t of epsilon is at least my regret divided by epsilon. Okay, Markov's inequality would tell me that this probability is smaller than this over epsilon for any epsilon, and the reverse tells me that there is 1 epsilon for which this is tight. Okay, so what it means is the following. So this is the set, again, omega t of epsilon is a set of points that I would like to discover. If I knew that the optimum was one of those points, then I would get an epsilon smaller regret. But it could be that many you know, that there are a few points which, if I discovered them, I would really get a much smaller loss. But on the other hand, those points have a very small probability. So I don't care about those. So what I'm doing here is that I'm doing a trade-off between having points that I want to discover, but also points that matter. Okay, points that have some posterior mass on them. Okay, and I set delta to be this nu t of omega t of epsilon. Okay, so delta is the probability with which I'm going to do the exploration. Now, let's assume for x bar that x bar is a point which has the following property. That for 1 over poly n fraction, so fraction, I mean with respect to the posterior distribution, of the points in omega t of epsilon, we have the following bound. So what we want is, when I play x bar, okay, my expected loss, compared to the expected loss if I play x bar but the optimum was alpha, I want this to be at least epsilon. Okay, let's think about this again. We know that there is at least one point, okay, where the difference between this and this is epsilon, okay, because alpha is in this set, okay. So I know at least one point where the difference is epsilon, and now what I want is to find a point x bar which is good for many of those functions. Okay. Now let's see why this is enough. Then I claim that if we have such a point x bar, we are done. So let's look at, recall that what we want to do is to show that the variance is lower bounded by your regret squared. Okay, whenever you regret, you learn something. So what is my variance? So the expectation over x, well, it's bigger than delta, that's the probability with which I do the exploration, times times vt of x bar, okay, the variance of x bar. What is the definition, again, of the variance of x bar? It's exactly this. So I integrate with respect, I draw alpha from the posterior distribution, and I look at the difference between the loss that I will observe in expectation if I play x bar, and the loss that I would observe in expectation if I play x bar, conditionally on the optimum being alpha. Okay, and I integrate the square of this. This is the definition of the variance. So now let's use those two inequalities. So we know that for a 1 over poly n fraction of alpha in this set omega t epsilon, this difference is epsilon over poly n. So I get that for delta over poly n fraction of all the alphas, this is at least epsilon over poly n. So this thing is lower bounded by delta squared epsilon squared over poly n. But now I have chosen delta to be exactly such that delta times epsilon is your regret. Okay, so delta squared epsilon squared is exactly your regret squared. Okay, so that's it. You're at this point you're done. Okay, you have shown that this is a strategy where whenever you regret, you get information. Okay, so the only difficulty that remains is to show that there exists such a point x bar. Okay, so I pick up the delta squared because you see here I integrate. I say that a 1 over poly n fraction of the point in omega t epsilon, verify something, but omega t epsilon itself has mass only delta. So overall, it's a mass delta over poly n. So that's how I pick up the other delta. Any other question? So now I'm going to tell you about how to pick this x bar, and this will be something a bit more general than what we are talking about right now. So let me just say this pigeonhole principle. So this is something very simple. We want a point x bar which is good for some fraction 1 over poly n of the alphas. Okay, so finding a point which is good for a fraction of the alphas, it's equivalent to finding a distribution such that for any fixed alpha, a point sample from this distribution is good with reasonable probability. Okay, again, this is an existential proof, right? Given this mu, it's not obvious how to find the x bar. Okay, there exists such an x bar, but how do you find it? I don't know. Okay, so now what do we want to do? Okay, so I'm going to spend the last 5 minutes on this, or 4 minutes. This is something more general, but that's exactly what we have to do. So let's say we are given a function, a convex function on K. What we want is to find a measure mu such that for any other convex function G, where I know that G differs from F by at least epsilon at some point. So I have this function F that I know, and there is another function G that I don't know, and I know that F and G are different by at least epsilon at some point. Okay, and what I want is that mu finds such points. I don't know where it is. I mean, high dimension, it could be anywhere, but I want mu to always find those points. And this is possible. Yeah. So this is a theorem. This is the main theorem of the paper. So let's parse it. So let's say we have a convex function, 1 Lipschitz, which is non-negative. Okay, it's always positive. And some scale epsilon. Then we claim that there exists a probability measure mu on K, such that the following holds true. For any alpha in K, and for any convex function and 1 Lipschitz G, such that G at alpha is smaller than epsilon. Okay, so I know that G at alpha is different from F by at least epsilon. One has the following property. The mass that mu puts on the point X where F and G differ by epsilon, epsilon over some poly n, is poly n. Okay, so I don't know G, so let me just draw a picture quickly. So you have this let's say this nice convex function, this is f, okay? And now there is some alpha where I know that the adversary hides a loss of minus epsilon here. Okay, so knowing only f, the best I can obtain is a zero loss here. But if I knew alpha, that the optimum was here, I would actually get a minus epsilon loss, okay? But if this is the truth, then there is some convex function here. Okay? And what I want to do is that I want to find a point, I want to play a point where f and g are going to be different. So here I can play basically any point here. But what if the adversary is doing something like this? You know, something very close to the center. Then if I just play a point uniformly at random, I will miss it. Okay, I will play a point here, and f and g are the same at any point here. So this is where the multiscale appears. Okay, you need to first find the scale at which the adversary is hiding, and then play a point at random at that scale. In dimension 1, again, this is like I told you everything right now. You pick a scale, and you pick a point uniformly at random at that scale. In higher dimension, it's more complicated, and I won't have time to tell you about that. Thank you.